When you awaken, something strange happens. Not enlightenment, but emptiness. The fire that once pushed you forward begins to fade. You stop chasing, stop striving, stop caring about the things that used to define your worth. The world will call it laziness, depression, or loss of ambition. But deep down, you know it's something else. It's the quiet dismantling of everything false within you. The universe strips you of the artificial drive that once ran on fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of falling behind, fear of being unseen. You lose your drive because you're no longer being controlled by illusions. This isn't the end of your power. It's the recalibration of it. You're not losing momentum, you're learning to move differently, from ego to essence, from striving to surrender. In this video, we'll uncover the 5 spiritual truths behind why you feel like you have no drive left after awakening, and why that emptiness is actually the sacred beginning of real purpose. Subscribe for more content that exposes the hidden side of awakening and reminds your soul why it came here. 1. Because motivation was always a disguise for fear. Before awakening, most of what you called drive wasn't truly inspiration. It was a response to fear. You weren't moving toward joy. You were running from pain. You chased success to escape failure. You sought validation to escape invisibility. You worked harder, pushed further, and aimed higher. Not because you were free, but because you were terrified of what would happen if you stopped. Your ambition wasn't wrong. It was survival wearing a mask of purpose. Society applauds that kind of drive, the restless kind that burns people alive while calling it passion. But awakening exposes the truth behind the fire. It shows you that much of what you built your life upon was a silent war with yourself. Every goal, every plan, every achievement was a way of saying, I'm still not enough. Then one day, something inside you breaks open. The illusion of not enough begins to die. You wake up and realize there's nothing left to prove, no one left to impress, and suddenly the fuel runs out. You don't feel motivated anymore. You don't feel the same hunger. And for the first time, you mistake peace for emptiness. But that emptiness isn't failure, it's detox. You're withdrawing from fear-based living, from decades of being powered by adrenaline, validation, and the anxiety of not being seen. When the fear fades, the engine that once kept you moving stalls. You think something's wrong with you, but it's the first time in your life you've stopped running. This phase feels like exhaustion because it is not just physical, but spiritual. You're exhausted from pretending, from performing, from pushing yourself to become what you already were. The body and mind collapse so that the soul can recalibrate. The space that used to be filled with striving now becomes a quiet void, uncomfortable, unfamiliar, but necessary. Here's the paradox. Fear-based motivation gave you movement but not meaning. It gave you direction, but not peace. It made you successful on the outside and starving on the inside. Awakening burns that illusion until all that's left is the question, if I'm no longer afraid, then why do I move? That question is sacred, because the moment you stop being motivated by fear, you create space for movement born of truth. The soul doesn't rush. It doesn't need trophies or timelines. It moves when it's aligned, not when it's pressured. That's why your energy feels still right now, because you're learning to act from being, not from lack. Imagine standing at the edge of a battlefield you've fought your whole life. only to realize the war was never real. The weapons fall from your hands. The silence that follows isn't defeat. It's freedom. You finally understand that rest is not idleness, and stillness is not stagnation. It's the sacred pause before the rebirth of authentic drive. You were never lazy. You were never unmotivated. You were just tired of living from fear. And now the universe is teaching you something far more powerful. How to create without desperation. How to move because you want to, not because you have to. That's what real drive feels like. Calm, grounded, effortless. It doesn't scream or chase. It flows. It comes from knowing you have nothing to prove and everything to express. So if you feel like you've lost your motivation after awakening, understand this. Your spirit didn't die. It's detoxing from false energy. The hunger is transforming. The drive is being purified. And soon, what rises from that silence won't be the fire of fear, but the flame of freedom. 2. Because the ego you used to serve has died. Before awakening, everything you did was in service to an invisible master, the ego. It built your identity piece by piece. Your achievements, your status, your image, your reputation. It whispered that success equaled safety and attention equaled worth. You believed that if you could just reach that next goal, that next milestone, that next level of recognition, then maybe you'd finally feel whole. But awakening dismantles that illusion with surgical precision. It pulls the curtain back and exposes the truth. The you've been serving was never real. It was a collection of expectations, wounds, and borrowed beliefs pretending to be you. The death of the ego feels like losing everything, because in a way, you do. You lose the identity that once made sense of the world, and what comes next is silence. Without the ego's constant hunger to feed, there's nothing pushing you forward. The mind that once screamed, do more, be more, achieve more, now falls quiet. You mistake that quiet for apathy, but what you're actually feeling is the shock of stillness after a lifetime of noise. For years, your actions were rooted in self-preservation. The ego kept you busy, distracted, constantly building or fixing something so you'd never have to face the stillness underneath. When that part of you dies, the energy that once moved through you freezes. The old motivation, the kind driven by comparison, approval, or fear, no longer exists. You don't recognize yourself anymore because the one who was always becoming has vanished. It's a strange kind of death. The death of ambition, of image, of identity. It doesn't look dramatic. There's no ceremony, no closure, just a gradual disinterest in everything that once mattered. You find yourself staring at old dreams with blank eyes, wondering how they ever held your attention. The ego mourns the spotlight. The soul sits quietly in the dark. And here's the truth few will tell you. That emptiness is sacred. You're not broken, you're becoming real. You're shedding the false layers that were built on performance and pretense. The ego chased external light. The soul learns to generate its own. But that transformation takes time. It's not glamorous. It's disorienting. It feels like standing in the ruins of your old self, waiting for something new to rise. What you're waiting for isn't motivation, it's authenticity. The soul doesn't chase, it listens. It doesn't rush to create from pressure. It creates from presence. The old energy was frantic, the new one is deliberate. You no longer need to prove your existence, you simply are. But that shift confuses the mind. The ego thrived on momentum. The soul thrives on alignment. When you stop feeding the ego, you start learning how to live without its voice. You begin asking new questions, not what do I need to achieve, but what feels true right now. You'll notice that when you act from ego, you feel drained. When you act from soul, you feel peace. The difference isn't in the task, it's in the energy behind it. The ego acts to be seen. The soul acts because it sees. The ego builds to impress. The soul builds to express. One fears silence. The other becomes it. So yes, the death of the ego can feel like apathy, but it's actually detox. You're purging the old fire that burned you just to keep you warm. You're learning how to live without needing to perform. That numbness isn't the absence of purpose. It's the pause before rebirth. When the soul finally remembers how to move, it won't run, it will glide. It will no longer seek validation because it's rooted in something eternal. You'll start creating again, but this time from stillness, not striving. From wholeness, not hunger. You're not losing your drive, you're losing your mask. And beneath it, there's something infinitely more powerful waiting to emerge. Not the performer, not the achiever, but the presence itself, the one who was never driven by ego, but guided by truth. 3. Because you're mourning the illusion of purpose, there's a quiet grief that comes after awakening. Not because you've lost something real, but because you've realized that what you worshipped was never true. For most of your life, you were taught that purpose was something external, a career, a title, an accomplishment, a legacy. You built your self-worth around those structures, believing that meaning could be earned through progress. But awakening dismantles that illusion like fire eating paper. Suddenly, the things that once lit you up now feel hollow. The excitement fades. The urgency dissolves. You look around and wonder how you ever believed that climbing ladders, collecting trophies, or being seen was the same as being alive. This is the part of awakening no one romanticizes, the mourning. You're not just losing interest, you're grieving identity. The old gods of purpose, money, validation, productivity, used to give you direction. They told you what to chase, who to be, and how to measure your worth. Now they're gone, and the silence left behind feels like emptiness. You wake up and realize you don't want to play the same games anymore. But without them, life feels strange. Almost meaningless. The ego panics. It whispers, if I'm not chasing something, what's the point? And for a while, you believe it. That's the paradox. The moment you begin to awaken, purpose doesn't expand, it disappears. You stop wanting to save the world or prove your significance. The mind interprets that as failure, but the soul knows its purification. The illusion of external purpose must die before true purpose can be born. It's like the ocean pulling back before the wave. The retreat feels empty, but it's gathering power beneath the surface. The old purpose, the one built on fear and validation, was always conditional. It depended on results, recognition, and approval. The new purpose, the one your soul is quietly forming, doesn't depend on anything outside of you. It doesn't seek to be measured. It seeks only to be lived. But you can't rush that shift. You must grieve first. You must feel the weight of disillusionment. You must face the strange sadness of realizing how much of your life was spent trying to earn worth you already had. You must sit in the stillness and let the false gods die. And as they die, something softer begins to grow in the ashes, curiosity. You start asking deeper questions. What if purpose isn't something to find, but something to remember? What if it isn't about achievement, but alignment? What if meaning isn't something I chase, but something I become? When those questions surface, you begin to feel movement again. Not the frantic pace of egoic ambition, but a quiet pull from the soul. You no longer need a reason to exist. Existence itself becomes the reason. You start doing things simply because they feel true, not because they'll make you look successful. You write not to be read, but to release. You create not to impress, but to express. You rest not because you're lazy, but because you finally honor your energy. This is what the morning is for, to make room for a pure kind of purpose, one that emerges from being rather than becoming. The emptiness you feel isn't the absence of meaning. It's the clearing of false meaning. When your soul rises again, your purpose won't be loud or performative. It will be quiet, steady, invisible to most. It won't require attention. It will simply radiate through everything you do. So don't rush to fill the void. Let it ache. Let it hollow you out. That hollowing is how the universe carves space for the real purpose. The one that doesn't feed your ego, but your essence. You're not lost. You're being purified. You're not directionless. You're being redirected. The illusion of purpose is dying, but what's being born beneath it is something truer, rarer, and infinitely more sacred. The kind of purpose that doesn't need to be known to be lived. 4. Because stillness is the new drive. At first, the stillness feels wrong. After years of being defined by motion, chasing, building, achieving, the quiet feels like failure. You wake up and don't feel the same fire. You used to measure your worth by how much you accomplished before noon, how busy your calendar looked, how productive you could be. Now you sit in the same room, doing nothing, and something inside whispers you're falling behind. But what you're actually doing is something far more radical. You're shifting from force to flow. In the old paradigm, drive was about pressure, pushing yourself to make things happen. You lived in a constant state of internal war, mistaking exhaustion for effort, anxiety for ambition. But awakening breaks that illusion. It strips you of the compulsion to prove. It pulls the plug on the endless chase and forces you to meet the one energy you've spent your whole life avoiding. Stillness. Stillness isn't stagnation. It's recalibration. It's not that you've stopped moving, it's that your movement has changed form. The awakened no longer chase what they desire. They magnetize it. They stop sprinting toward their goals and start embodying the frequency of what they seek. The game is no longer about chasing outcomes, it's about becoming the vibration that makes those outcomes inevitable. You begin to notice how the world around you shifts when you do nothing but be. People call, opportunities align, synchronicities unfold. Not because you're forcing, but because your energy is finally clear enough to receive. This is the paradox of spiritual evolution. The less you push, the more life flows toward you. But this kind of stillness is not passive, it's conscious. It's active awareness, like the still surface of a lake that reflects everything clearly because it's undisturbed. You start realizing that your true power isn't in action for action's sake, but in aligned presence. When you move from stillness, even the smallest step has impact. The old drive was fueled by scarcity. I have to do more to be enough. The new drive is born from sufficiency. I already am, and from that fullness, I create. That shift feels foreign at first. It confuses the ego, which only understands movement through control. When you stop forcing, it panics. It whispers, you're losing your edge. You're wasting time. But what's really happening is the dismantling of the old nervous system, one addicted to adrenaline, validation, and struggle. The body is detoxing from urgency. The soul is remembering how to move with grace. Stillness is terrifying because it offers no distractions. It forces you to face yourself, your fears, your impatience, your emptiness. But once you stay long enough, something sacred begins to happen. The stillness starts speaking. You begin to hear the subtle voice beneath the noise, intuition, divine timing, inner knowing. You realize that creation doesn't begin with effort. It begins with alignment. All true action is born from listening first. The soul moves only when the moment feels right, not when the mind feels pressured. In this stillness, ideas come not as thoughts, but as whispers. You start creating from clarity, not confusion. You stop running on deadlines and start dancing with timing. Life stops feeling like a race and starts feeling like rhythm. This is the new drive, one that isn't loud or frantic, but precise, deliberate, sacred. It's the kind of drive that builds empires quietly, writes books in silence, heals others just by existing. You're no longer moving for approval. You're moving because presence itself demands expression. The world may look at your calm and call it complacency. Let them. The awakened no longer measure worth by motion. They understand that power isn't in pace, it's in presence. Because when you're aligned, you don't chase what's yours. You attract it effortlessly. And when you finally understand that stillness is not the absence of drive, but its highest form, life begins to respond differently. The universe mirrors your energy, matching your calm with clarity, your surrender with synchronicity. You stop fighting time. You stop fighting yourself. And in that stillness, you discover a deeper kind of movement, one guided by grace, not grind. You haven't lost your drive. You've simply outgrown the kind that burns. You've traded hustle for harmony. And now, instead of chasing the life you want, you're allowing it to find you. 5. Because you're being prepared for a higher kind of action, there comes a moment on every awakened path when movement stops. Not because you failed, but because life has decided to rewire your direction. The universe pauses you on purpose. It's not punishment, it's purification. You've spent years running on borrowed energy, the kind fueled by fear, approval, and the desperate need to prove your worth. Now that engine has died, and in its silence you're being prepared. The stillness feels unbearable at first. You used to equate motion with meaning. Productivity was your self-worth, and momentum felt like oxygen. So when the drive disappears, panic takes its place. You try to force yourself back into old rhythms, but they no longer work. The universe resists your push, not because it wants to hold you back, but because it's redirecting you towards something higher. You're being emptied for devotion. In the old life, you acted from ego, from the hunger to be seen, validated, successful, safe. You built, achieved, hustled, and accumulated. yet beneath every triumph was a quiet ache. This isn't it. Awakening burns through that illusion. It dissolves the why behind your actions until nothing false remains. And in that burning drive as you knew it dies, but what's born in its place is sacred. You begin to realize that divine timing doesn't move at the speed of ambition. It moves at the speed of alignment. The universe pauses you because it's teaching you the art of still service, the power of waiting without wasting. It's preparing your energy to serve something beyond personal gain. Because once your actions no longer come from survival, they become extensions of truth. This death of false drive is necessary. You can't serve higher purpose with old motives. You can't hold divine power with a hand still shaking from ego. So the universe breaks your rhythm to teach you reverence. It silences your goals until every desire is purified by fire. It strips away your ambition until only intention remains. And when that process completes, something extraordinary happens. You stop chasing outcomes and start serving essence. You no longer wake up asking, "What can I get?" but rather, "What can I give?" You stop striving to become something and start surrendering to what already wants to move through you. Your work, your words, your art, they stop being about self-expression and start being about transmission. You're no longer doing for impact. You're becoming the impact itself. This is what devotion feels like. A quiet, burning steadiness that doesn't need recognition. It's not frantic or loud. It's not about winning or competing. It's the calm force of a soul fully aligned with its mission, no longer questioning its pace. You realize that you're not here to create for validation, you're here to participate in creation itself. From that state, action flows differently. You no longer push ideas into existence, you allow them to be born through you. The mind serves the heart serves truth, and truth serves something timeless. Every movement becomes prayer. Every silence becomes listening. You're not chasing alignment, you are alignment. And yet, to reach this point, the universe must first strip you bare. It must let everything superficial die, the false urgency, the need for applause, the addiction to movement. It must teach you that rest is not laziness. It's sacred recalibration. It must show you that true power never rushes, because it doesn't fear being late. When the new energy finally arrives, it doesn't roar, it hums. You'll feel the return of motion, but this time it won't come from anxiety, it will come from grace. The same tasks you once forced now flow. The same dreams you once chased now call to you effortlessly. You move again, but differently, lighter, clearer, anchored in something infinite. That's the secret no one tells you. Awakening doesn't erase drive, it refines it. It takes you from ambition to purpose, from motion to meaning, from hustle to holy work. You haven't lost your momentum, you've been initiated into a higher form of movement. Because the universe isn't asking you to do more, it's asking you to do less, but with more truth. Less striving, more surrender. Less proving, more presence. Less control, more communion. You're not lazy, you're becoming sacredly selective. You're not unmotivated. You're being prepared. And when the moment comes to act again, your movement won't come from the noise of the world, but from the still, divine rhythm of your soul. Losing your drive after spiritual awakening isn't the end of ambition. It's the cleansing of it. The universe strips you of everything false. Fear disguised as motivation, ego disguised as purpose, noise disguised as passion. What feels like emptiness is actually sacred preparation, a dismantling of the person who used to chase life so that a new one can become life itself. In this space, stillness becomes your teacher. You learn that doing less doesn't mean losing direction. It means finding alignment. You begin to move not from hunger, but from harmony. And when action returns, it carries a different vibration, quiet, clear, unstoppable. You no longer chase outcomes. You attract them. You no longer seek validation. You radiate wholeness. You no longer perform. You embody. The drive that returns after awakening is not fueled by fear. It's born of devotion. Devotion to truth, to presence, to the work that matters beyond recognition. So if you feel paused right now, trust it. Your soul isn't broken. It's being recalibrated for divine movement. When you rise again, you won't run. You'll walk in peace, and everything meant for you will meet you there.